St. Suzuki claims that Santa needs to be relocated because of global warming. That the Arctic is nothing but open water, a climate of fear from the global warming cult. Well, we received a very interesting email from a citizen of our nation up at the top of the world. CFS Alert is the world's most northerly habited location. So Santa moved in with us quite a while ago, seeing it was a top secret installation like his old shop on the pole. He fit right in. No, his shop is not in any danger, as Suzuki claims, and neither he or we intend to relocate Santa's workshop, nor would we ask for money from kids to do this, as David Suzuki does. Now, that's an email from a viewer who happens to be a Canadian soldier who's been to Alert, the place St. Suzuki tells your kids is melting. So he, Suzuki, can get their money and save Santa. Soldier also sent us some pictures of what Alert looks like today. Kids, are you watching? Looks like the Arctic's just fine. How else do we know? Well, take a look at this. This is what's left of a tree that grew in the Arctic 5,000 years ago. Now, to hear the global warmest, you would think the Arctic would have been replaced by an entire forest of these trees. But it's too cold for the trees to thrive now. Too cold. Did you hear that? I said, too cold. Meanwhile, just when you thought we were out, he pulls us back in. Environment Minister Peter Kent made the bold decision to tell the UN Climate Conference in Durban that Canada would not renew its commitment to the Kyoto Protocol this year. We applauded him for that. Now he says, assuming the rest of the planet's world emitters agree, Canada might sign on to a broader agreement by 2015. And here you're thinking he stood up against all this junk science and propaganda. Now, I agree. It's not fair for Canada to commit to anything when truly large emitters refuse to do so. But does that make these agreements correct? Tom Harris of the International Climate Science Coalition joins us from Ottawa. Hi, Tom.
Yeah, hi, Charles.
Well, I want to give you your opportunity here to deal with the latest news that we are now out of Kyoto. Tom.
Excellent news. This is the big battle that we've been in for several years. Get out of Kyoto before you're going to get penalized. And he did it today, and while there's a long war ahead of us, this is a big battle. It's a great Christmas present from Peter Kent.
Okay, now what about, he pulls us in, and we applaud him, and then he, with the other hand, says, wait a minute, maybe something bigger and broader than Kyoto.
Yeah.
We'll possibly sign off on that by 2015.
Yeah, well, actually, they have got to be very careful, because if you read the Durban agreements closely, what you find is they have all the recipes to become another Kyoto. And in particular, like Cancun, the Durban agreements say that the first and overriding priority of developing countries is economic and social development and pulling their people out of poverty. And they say this in the Durban agreements twice to make sure that you really got it, that nothing's going to interfere with their first and overriding priority. So what it basically means is that, of course, greenhouse gas reduction will always interfere with that priority, so they'll be able to withdraw. They've got an out clause for developing nations, so the Conservative government have got to be very careful that they don't sign on to another Kyoto Protocol.
Can you explain to the Canadian viewer tonight, what is it that we are actually on the hook for? Because if we don't make that abundantly clear, it just all feels like spin, and public relations to them. Now, if all of this is just PR and spin, fine, you'll tell us, Tom Harris. No one follows this more closely than you do. Are we actually on the hook for anything?
Well, not now. As of Peter Kent's statement just a few hours ago, we are out of, well, we will be as soon as we tell the UN, which he said we will do by the end of this year. We will be out of the Kyoto Protocol formally, officially, legally. Okay, this is a big deal, because in 2014, if we had stayed in, along with all the other Kyoto participants who had limits, the UN was going to assess how much did we miss our Kyoto targets by, and they would charge us a certain amount of money. Now, whether we would be legally bound to comply with that is another question, and we could talk about that all night. But the price tag Peter Kent was talking about was $14 billion, essentially in fines, if we had stayed in.
All right, now, if we go back 20 years, Kyoto era, to
yeah.
now. We go back 20 years, the numbers have been added up. Canada's emissions are up by 20% in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But China, and of course we take all our moral cues and environmental cues from China, their emissions, China's emissions in the last 20 years are up by more than 250%. I guess that's why we need to take our cues from them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, China is very smart because by talking about legally binding treaties, but giving themselves an out clause, they're actually setting up the circumstance that we're going to move all of our industry to China. There won't be anything left here if we actually do have a 2015 legally binding target, which comes into force in 2020. There's not going to be anything left in North America. So China's, they've got good negotiators.
Yeah, but I mean, Tom, who's kidding who here? I mean, their emissions are going to go higher. They are still only at the beginnings of their industrial revolution.
Right.
So their emissions are bound to go higher and higher and higher. Is anyone trying to make the point that somehow the Chinese will play fair ball? The Chinese may jiggle the numbers here and there, but in reality, where it matters, in the sky, in that great big sky up there, they're about to get a whole lot more pollution, real pollution. Not CO2, which is not pollution, but the sulfur and all of the other real crap that does give people cancer. Yeah. It's going up into the Chinese air.
Well, in fact, one of the scientists that I work with adopted a baby from China, and he went over there a few years ago, and he had to live actually in the community for a week. So the orphanage got to know them and that it was okay. And he said that the Chinese over there, they just laugh. They say, CO2, climate change? Look around you. We have filthy rivers and streams and air. People are wearing masks. They have real pollution problems, and it's going to get worse. So, a helpful thing for us to do is to help them evolve in a more clean way from a pollution point of view. And that's where technical aid would make sense. But helping them reduce CO2 is just throwing our money down the drain.
All right, in the 40 seconds we have left here, what's your message to our soldier up at alert right near the real North Pole, who says that the Suzuki is completely off base, no measurable climate change from where he sits?
Yeah, in fact, the climate change has been very small even over the whole last century. The warmest period since the end of the last glacial, or ice age as they call it, was 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, when it was much warmer in the Arctic. And you have to say, did polar bears go extinct? They evolved over 100,000 years ago, and they got through much warmer times when civilizations were booming in a much warmer period. So, we really don't have anything to worry about in the near future.
So it's fair to say Santa is not on the Suzuki bandwagon.
No, warming and cooling, it's normal. And, 1 year it's warmer. But overall, we're seeing a slight warming, but nothing to get excited about.
Tom Harris, thanks very much. I know you're all excited today about the official dropping of Kyoto. Thanks very much for this.
Fabulous news.
Right. Appreciate it. Tom Harris in Ottawa. Don't forget to tune into our Chorus radio show broadcast all across this great country. 14 radio markets from Pacific to Atlantic.